In 1980, you didn't just spend £5, you chose, because £5 in your hand meant something real. It meant a full Saturday sorted. It meant decisions worth making. It meant you could walk into a shop, a pub, a market, a cinema, and come out the other side with something to show for it and change to spare. Today, that same note barely gets you a coffee and a sad little packet of crisps at a service station. You hand it over and it's just gone. No ceremony, no satisfaction, nothing. But in 1980, Britain, a fiver was serious. 10 things it actually bought you, and why every single one of them is gone forever. Not a corner shop dash, not a top-up, a full weekly shop. Bread, butter, a dozen eggs, a big tin of beans, tea bags, a pint of milk, a bag of potatoes, maybe a pork chop and a couple of tins of soup, all of it under £5, if you were careful. And careful wasn't a virtue then, it was just common sense. It was the way everybody operated. Nothing was wasted. The chicken roasted on Sunday became sandwiches on Monday and soup by Wednesday. Leftovers weren't a lifestyle trend or a meal prep strategy. They were just Tuesday's dinner, and you were grateful for them. People kept a little notebook for the shopping, wrote the list out in pencil, added it up in their head before they got to the till, because the embarrassment of coming up short was something you actively planned around. That relationship with food, with money, with not wasting, it came from necessity. And somewhere between then and now, when the big supermarkets arrived and the aisles got longer and everything got wrapped in plastic and reduced at 7 p.m., that careful, considered way of feeding yourself quietly disappeared. And we haven't got it back since. Bus into town, return ticket. A proper sit-down lunch at a Wimpy, burger and chips with a knife and fork, because that's how you ate at a Wimpy, not hunched over a paper bag. A ticket to the pictures in the afternoon. Maybe a bag of something from the pick and mix on the way out. Change jingling in your pocket on the bus home. All of it. 1 fiver. Done. The idea that you could hand a child, or take yourself, £5 on a Saturday morning and say, "That's your day sorted," and genuinely mean it. That's not nostalgia dressed up as economics. That's a measurable fact about what ordinary life once cost. Today, the bus fare alone in most British towns has crossed £3 each way. The cinema is £14. A burger and a drink is £12 if you're lucky. The same Saturday out now costs £35 minimum. And that's if you don't buy anything at the pick and mix, which, by the way, has been replaced by a self-serve kiosk with a plastic lid and a £1.2 minimum bag. The day out hasn't changed. The fiver has. Not cheap ones, not knockoffs. Proper black leather school shoes, Clarks, or a decent market stall with laces, with soles that actually gripped, built to last a full school year and quietly expected to. Mum took the fitting seriously, thumb pressed down on the toe, too much room at the front, back on the shelf, too tight around the heel, back on the shelf. Just right, they got the tissue paper stuffed back in and the lid went on, and that was that. Job done. £5, maybe 4 and a bit, and you walked out shod for winter. Those shoes would go through PE, through puddles, through the kickabout at the back of the estate, through a term of scraping along walls and still turn up polished for school photos, because your mum wouldn't hear of anything less. Today, the equivalent, not premium, not branded, costs £40. And it falls apart by Easter, because the expectation that something bought for children should last has quietly been replaced by the expectation that it won't, and that you'll buy another pair. And that's simply how it works now. Durability used to be the point. Now it's almost a selling feature. Premium durability, an upsell, something you pay extra for. This one needs the numbers, because the numbers are the story. In 1980, Petrol in Britain cost around 28 pence per litre. A Ford Cortina, the most common family car on British roads that year, had a fuel tank of roughly 50 litres. Fill it from empty, £14. But most people weren't filling from empty. A fiver got you nearly 18 litres. That was half a tank. That was the week's driving sorted, without a second thought. Nobody stood at the pump watching the numbers and doing mental arithmetic about whether they could afford to let it click past £30. Nobody made a decision about whether they needed petrol or whether they could stretch it another day. You pulled in, you filled up, you drove away. It was an errand, not an event. Today, with petrol at around £1.55 per litre, that same £5 gets you just over 3 litres. 3 litres, that's roughly 40 miles in a small car. That's enough to get to work and halfway back. The car hasn't changed that much. The road hasn't changed. The distance from home to work hasn't changed. But the casual, unremarkable act of just topping up the car without it registering as a financial decision, that's gone. And we've somehow all just accepted that. A 7-inch single in 1980 cost between 80p and £1. An LP, a full album, 12 tracks, gatefold sleeve, the lot, was £4 to £5. You saved up for it. Went into Woolworths or WHS Smith, flipped through the racks, actually flipped through them, physically, with your fingers, found it, held it, looked at the cover properly, checked the track listing on the back. And then you committed. You bought it. You owned it. Not rented, not borrowed from a streaming library you pay monthly access to. Owned. It was yours. Your name was on nothing but your possession of it was absolute. You took it home, slid it out of the sleeve, put it on the turntable, dropped the needle, and listened. Properly. All the way through. Because you had paid for it, and it was going nowhere, and there was something deeply satisfying about that. You read every word on the sleeve while it played, the credits, the thank yous, the odd philosophical note the band left in the middle section that made no sense but felt important. You knew that record. You knew its weight, its smell, the little scratch on side 2 that had been there since the second week. Music that costs something to own is music you listen to differently. That relationship between paying for something and truly attending to it is one of the quieter things streaming has ended. Not dramatically, not with fanfare, just slowly, gradually, one playlist at a time. Not Michelin, not a special occasion, just out. A local pub that did food, or the Italian at the end of the high street that had been there since the 1960s and probably still charged 1960s prices out of habit. Prawn cocktail to start, always prawn cocktail. This was 1980 and nobody had heard of bruschetta. A steak with chips and a bread roll. Something from the sweet trolley. A glass of wine or a lager. 2 people. £5 or not far above it. Tuesday night. Not an anniversary. Not a birthday. Just a Tuesday where neither of you felt like cooking and someone said, "Shall we just go out?" and the answer was yes without it requiring a budget meeting. That ease, the low stakes, midweek, completely unremarkable ability to just go somewhere and eat, has gone in a way that's hard to quantify because it wasn't a specific thing. It was a general feeling about life being affordable at the edges. The spontaneous meal. The unplanned evening. The Tuesday that just became a night out because £5 was sitting there and the pub was warm. Today, a meal for 2 at a mid-range restaurant rarely comes in under £60. Tips are expected. Service charges are added automatically. The bread roll is £4.50 extra. And Tuesday is not a night people go out without planning ahead. The ease has been priced away. Average pocket money in 1980. somewhere between 30 pence and 50 pence a week, which made £5 roughly 12 weeks of the stuff, 12 Saturdays, 12 opportunities. And on each of those Saturdays, a child with 40 pence in their hand understood something that no school lesson quite teaches. This is finite. You can have the cola cubes or the pear drops, not both. You can have the comics or the football stickers, not both. You weigh it up. You decide. You live with it. The sweet shop transaction was an education. The glass jars lined up behind the counter. You pointed, and the woman, always a woman, usually with her glasses on a chain, reached in with the metal scoop, weighed out a quarter on the little silver scales, tipped them into a white paper bag, twisted the top, and handed it over. 2 pence change. You walked out with something that was yours because you'd chosen it and paid for it with money you'd earned by being 11 and waiting a week. That lesson, the feel of a limited budget, the genuine weight of a small decision, is harder to teach when money is digital and instant, and the word no means something you might be able to get around with a screen tap. The pocket money economy was a rehearsal for real life, and it worked. Standing on the terrace, a first division match, the top flight of English football, cost between 80 pence and £2 in 1980. You could go every other week for a £5 note and still afford your chips on the way home. And the people in the ground were the people who had always been in the ground. Working men who had stood in the same spot on the same terrace for 20 years, next to the same faces, who knew every chant, every referee's name, every player's weakness, who brought a flask and complained about the view and loved every minute of it. Football was working class by nature, by geography, by culture. It wasn't marketed. It wasn't branded. It didn't have a hospitality suite or a premium experience package or an official hydration partner. It had terraces and noise and 40,000 people who had all come from 3 miles away and were going home on the same bus. The Taylor Report in 1990 changed the grounds, introducing seater stadiums that were safer, undeniably. But the ticket prices followed the seats upward and never came back down. Same clubs, same cities, same matches. £60, £80, £100 a seat now. And the people who built those clubs, who stood on those terraces and passed those scarves down through generations, quietly found they could not afford to be there anymore. The terraces are gone. The prices are not coming down. The original fans are watching on television, which is the only place the game now expects them to be. The teenager from 3 doors down charged 50p an hour. She was 16, reliable, came round at 7, watched the telly, put the kids to bed, ate the biscuits, she definitely ate the biscuits, and was back home before midnight. 3 hours, £1.50, which left £3.50 for the evening. A round at the pub, under £1. Another round, another £1. Fish and chips on the walk home. 40p, maybe 50p if you wanted the large. You went out. Properly out. Not a planned event. Not a babysitter booked 6 weeks in advance on an app that takes a 25% cut. Just, we're going out tonight. Can you come round at 7? There was a whole infrastructure of affordable, informal, neighborhood-level childcare and socializing that existed in 1980 Britain and just doesn't anymore. The teenager next door has been replaced by a licensed, insured, DBS-checked childcare professional charging £15 an hour with a 48-hour booking notice, which is probably safer, and also means Tuesday nights don't happen anymore. The spontaneous evening out is a 1980 concept. We retired it sometime around the point a round of drinks crossed a tenner. A card in the window, 3 words, bike, good condition, £4. Or the classified section in the local paper. 5 lines, no photo. A phone number you called from the hallway with the door pulled half shut because it felt like a private matter. You knocked on the door. The bike was in the garden. You looked it over, pressed the tires, squeezed the brakes. It was fine. You handed over the notes. You pushed it home. Oil the chain, pump the tires, tighten the saddle. That was the full maintenance schedule. And then you had transport, freedom. The entire world that existed within cycling distance was now yours, without asking permission or being driven there or needing anyone to organize it. Children in 1980 disappeared on bikes, not in a worrying way, in the way that children were simply expected to be somewhere else, on their own, doing something, back by tea. The bicycle was the vehicle of that independence. £5 or less second-hand, and a child's world expanded overnight. We talk a lot now about children's freedom, screen time, outdoor play, independence. We publish studies and hold conferences, and then we price the second-hand bike at £80 on Facebook Marketplace, strap a mandatory helmet on, fit a GPS tracker, and wonder why children don't just go out anymore. £5, 10 things, all of them gone. Not just the prices, though the prices are extraordinary when you sit with them, but the way of living behind the prices, the expectation that a week's wages covered a week's life. That leisure was an ordinary part of existence, not a budgeted luxury, that you could act on an impulse, the pint, the meal, the record, the bike, without it requiring a decision. That fiver wasn't magic. Britain in 1980 had its problems, real ones, serious ones. The country was in the middle of enormous economic pain for many people. This isn't a claim that everything was better. It's something more specific than that. It's a claim that ordinary, unremarkable, Tuesday-level life was affordable, that the small comforts weren't rationed, that a child with 50p and a Saturday had a genuine day ahead of them. We talk about the cost of living like it arrived recently, like it's a crisis with a start date and a fix on the way. But the drift has been happening for 40 years, slow, steady, so gradual you barely felt each individual step. You only really notice when you stop and look back at where you were standing. And that's what that fiver is. Not a number. A marker. A before and after. Drop it in the comments. What would your £5 have bought? And if you know someone who remembers, send this to them. They'll have something to say about it.